Now one of the world's top fluoride experts has issued a grim warning about what it could be doing to our health and that of unborn children. Yet as Frank Pengello reports, you'll get a different spin from dentists and health bureaucrats.
We consider that as a poison. Why should a poison be in drinking water?
The poison is fluoride. It's there because government health bureaucrats and dentists tell us it's for our common good, for reducing tooth decay, and at levels which won't harm you. That doesn't wash with Professor A.K. Shashila.
They should realize it's a poisonous substance. It doesn't promote health. It is a disease-causing agent, and the fluoridation should be stopped as early as possible.
Professor Shashila is one of the world's leading experts on fluoride. Her own extensive research, along with 70 years of data in India, backs up what she's saying, and it's most disturbing.
I would consider a pregnant mother taking fluoride-contaminated products. I'm using the word products, which includes water, toothpaste, black tea, processed food products which has fluoride.
Any liquid?
Anything. Where her urinary fluoride is high, she is going to cause a lot of damage to the fetus, the growing embryo, the infant which is going to be born.
The American Dental Association warns against using fluoridated water to mix baby formula. Not so here.
They don't read, they are not aware, they don't update themselves, they don't do any research. So we are in a serious problem.
Professor Shashila says exposure to fluoride could also be the cause of many ills like neck, shoulder and joint pains, which may be misdiagnosed by doctors. She routinely does urine tests to check fluoride levels in her patients.
Remove the fluoride ingestion starting from toothpaste, black tea, fluoridated water, whatever, and you bring down the urinary fluoride to normal limits, the patient recovers.
Fluoride is also used as a preservative and also lurks in many products we consume. But apart from toothpaste, it's not listed on labels.
So it is coming into one's body through many sources, and you are not aware.
For the first 25 years of practice, I promoted water fluoridation aggressively. I thought I saw the benefits. It wasn't until I actually looked at the information myself and sat down and looked at the different government agencies and the different reports and the studies that I began to realize that fluoridation was a problem. One of the first things I did is I looked at my tube of toothpaste. It says drug facts. I know it's a drug. If I were to give it to you, it'd have to be a prescription. That's for swallowing. When it comes to toothpaste, it also says don't swallow. And if you do swallow, contact a poison control center. Well, the amount of fluoride that they're talking about is a pea-sized amount of fluoride. You probably don't see that in advertisements, a pea-sized amount of fluoride. Usually when I see an advertisement, it looks more like a Dairy Queen ice cream cone. That amount is 1/4 milligram of fluoride. Well, that's the same amount of fluoride as what we find in 8 ounces of water. 1/4 milligram of fluoride, 1/4 milligram of fluoride. Don't swallow. If you do, call the Poison Control Center.
Fluoride. Dentists say that drinking it can protect your teeth against cavities. Cities and towns all across the world actually dump it into the water supply, hoping to indiscriminately medicate the population through their tap water faucets. The official story on fluoride sounds wonderful. Drink the stuff and you won't get cavities, we're told. It's a nice story. But there's another side to this story, a side you're never told. And it starts with the astonishing but verifiable fact that nearly all the fluoride dripped into municipal water supplies isn't naturally occurring fluoride at all. In fact, it's actually a combination of hexafluorosilicic acid and sodium silicofluoride. These two chemicals are considered highly toxic by the EPA. They're actually classified as hazardous waste, and when packaged for transportation, they must be labeled as poison and handled by workers wearing industrial safety gear. So, what are hexafluorosilicic acid and sodium silicofluoride, and where do they come from? That's the part of this story that you probably won't believe. That is, not until you check it out for yourself. Because the more you look into the mythology of fluoride, the more bizarre this story becomes. And this bizarre story begins at phosphate mining companies. Phosphate is an important mineral used in fertilizers. It's mined from natural rock deposits scattered across the world, and the phosphate rock is then refined to produce phosphoric acid. If that name sounds familiar, that's because it's one of the main ingredients in carbonated sodas, such as Coke and Pepsi. Phosphoric acid is often compared to battery acid. It's a highly acidic liquid that is believed to be the primary reason why drinking sodas can result in kidney stones and a loss of bone mineral density. Phosphate rock is also used to create fertilizers. The problem is phosphate is often contaminated with high levels of fluoride, as much as 40,000 parts per million, or up to 4% of the raw ore. To remove the fluoride, sulfuric acid is added to a wet slurry of phosphate and water. This causes the fluoride to vaporize, creating highly toxic gaseous compounds such as hydrogen fluoride and silicon tetrafluoride. These toxic fluoride chemicals used to be released directly from the smokestacks of phosphate mining operations, but the nearby farms suffered devastating losses of cattle and food crops, which withered away and died due to, guess what? Fluoride poisoning. In order to stop this environmental destruction, the phosphate mining industry put in place a way to capture the toxic fluoride chemical vapors so that they wouldn't be released into the air and kill the surrounding livestock and vegetation. This was accomplished by installing wet scrubbers that captured the toxic fluoride chemicals, preventing them from being released into the environment and killing the plant and animal life living nearby. It is from these wet scrubbers that toxic fluoride chemicals are now harvested. They're collected, repackaged, shipped to your local city, and then dumped into the municipal water supply. So instead of these toxic fluoride chemicals being released by the phosphate mining smokestacks, they are instead captured and then released into the water supply of large cities, where the chemicals then contaminate the water of millions of people at a time. This is called water fluoridation. When dentists and doctors say they support fluoride in the water supply, what they're really saying is that they support the mass poisoning of the population with a highly toxic hazardous waste product that, if it weren't dripped into the water supply, it would have to be disposed of as a highly toxic hazardous waste under strict EPA regulations. Curiously, it is a violation of federal law to dump hexafluorosilicic acid or sodium silicofluoride into the water. Such an act, in fact, is considered an act of terrorism.
Dr. Hodge in 1965 wrote another book. This time, though, in that book, all he talked about were the effects of fluoride on bone and teeth. He did not talk about anything about these CNS effects. But then Cliff showed me some documents from 1944. And in this memo, I just want to point out a couple of statements. This memo was marked top secret, and no one knew this, and it's dated April of 1944. And I can't hardly read it from here, but it says, it's to Stafford Warren, who was part of the head of the project, and they talk about here that there is clinical evidence to suggest that C616, that's uranium hexafluoride, may have a rather marked central nervous system effect with mental confusion, drowsiness and lassitude as the conspicuous features, it seems most likely that the fluoride component, rather than the uranium, is the causative factor. They knew in 1944 that it was causing a problem. They go on to say here that it's causing a problem and we are worried about it and we want to do animal experimentation because we're afraid that our workers are going to become confused and they're not going to be able to handle working with this stuff. They're going to be a danger to themselves and they're going to be a danger to others. The memo goes on. They set up a budget. They gave money to these people to do the studies in rats that I just did in 1996. They had the budget. It was approved. The Colonel and the Manhattan Project said, yes, go ahead and do it. This office approves that this experimental program can go forward. Not 6 months later, another memo comes in and it says, if you started those studies on the mental condition in rats, stop them. And if you haven't started them, don't start them at all. So they knew there was a problem, they stopped it back 50 years ago, and they never did the study, and the studies were never reintroduced into the documents. And you don't see that in the literature today, and that's why you don't see a lot of the dentist who knows the problems with the CNS. Now, going on, since then I've gone to other literature around the world, and I can tell you in a nutshell. You've mentioned the IQ problems. I can tell you that there's a review that's recently written, as recent as 1994, that says the syndrome that you have if you're exposed looks a lot like the chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, I can go back to the 1950s where these people, they talk about their memory loss, they talk about the problems with coordinating their thoughts. These are documented and they do exist, but you can't find them in the literature in the United States. I had to go outside. I had to wait until someone knocked on my door and showed me declassified documents that these problems were known about some time ago. Then I have to go on. I see I'm a little too slow, but one of the last documents I saw that just blew me away, and I said, if I do nothing else, I've got to get out so that the people do have the right to know this. They went out, they had one big accident or a lot of release of the fluoride. The chief pharmacologist, Harold Hodge, that I worked with, went out and he writes a memo about his visit to the site. And he says there's no question it's hydrogen fluoride. There's no question that the people are sick. There's no question that the fruit is poisoned. There's no question that the levels were so high that there had to be an agricultural embargo on the fruit, which was stopped. There was no question that people were being poisoned. And then he turns around and says, should we try and alleviate the fear of the public about fluoride by telling them it's good for their teeth? So the next time someone comes up and says to you that fluoride is good for your teeth, if I were you, I would just say no.
Thank you. Dr. Mullinex.
Proponents of fluoridation were invited to speak at this Clark University forum so that Worcester citizens could make an informed choice of whether to fluoridate their community. Following a 40-year-old policy of not appearing with opponents of fluoridation where detailed questions of safety and effectiveness are to be addressed, promoters of fluoridation refused to attend, electing instead to rely on statements of denial that any question of harmfulness exists and impugning the character of anyone who presents facts to the contrary. Unfortunately, the general population is highly susceptible to million-dollar sound bites touting the unsubstantiated merits. Ask your public access station to repeat this tape so that others can be informed. An extended version of this tape is also available for VCR viewing, which includes a question and answer segment from this forum. Please assist Citizens for Safe Drinking Water and other organizations around the nation to stop this deadly practice of poisoning our water supply. In California, another 25 million people will suffer from fluoridation unless we act now.